Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking you right into the middle of a high-stakes crisis that's unfolding in Europe as we speak.
Hmm.
It's a situation that, well, it combines this threat of economic disaster with a really unsettling scientific mystery. We're wading into an urgent outbreak of African swine fever, or ASF, in Catalonia, Spain. And when you look at the potential fallout here, the stakes just could not be higher.
Not at all.
Spain isn't just a major player in pork production. I mean, it is the undisputed powerhouse in the European Union.
Yeah, that's right.
So just to give you a sense of the scale, this is an export industry, moving pork and, related products like world-famous jamón ibérico, valued at a staggering $8.8 billion a year.
Exactly. And when you look at that volume, the urgency is, well, it's palpable.
Right.
If this highly contagious virus gets a foothold in Spain's commercial farms, it would trigger automatic trade restrictions, mass culling, and a financial crisis that would just reverberate across the continent.
So when those 13 confirmed cases showed up in wild boars,
Dead animals. Found since late November, just outside Barcelona. The alarm bells went off immediately. Loudly.
initially, though, the situation seemed grim but kind of familiar, right?
That's right. The immediate, sort of simplest theory that authorities put forward was contamination from outside Spain.
Okay.
African swine fever is incredibly resilient. It can survive for a very long time in processed meat. So the hypothesis was that a wild boar, maybe scavenging near a truck stop or something, ate an infected, discarded piece of meat.
Like a sandwich.
Exactly. A sandwich or a cold cut left behind by an international haulier. That specific vector is, historically, the #1 way this virus jumps borders in Europe. It's the standard initial puzzle piece.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Because that standard theory, depressing as it is,
Yeah.
was suddenly replaced by a scientific shocker that has just completely upended the investigation.
It really has.
They weren't just looking for careless travelers anymore. Now they were looking inside high-security buildings.
The scientific data just didn't support the sandwich theory. It couldn't have.
Precisely. So our mission in this deep dive is to explore the specific, highly technical evidence, the fingerprint of the virus itself, that has led authorities away from the food chain idea and straight toward investigating 5 nearby research facilities as well as potential sources.
And this is where it gets really fascinating.
Spain's agriculture ministry opened an entirely new, and I have to say, highly sensitive line of inquiry based purely on viral sequencing. The moment they identified the specific genetic profile of the virus in those dead boars, they realized they were dealing with something completely unexpected. This strain was not the one that's currently circulating in other EU member states.
And that difference is the absolute defining moment of this entire investigation.
Okay.
Think of virus sequencing like building this huge, constantly updated family tree for a pathogen. Researchers isolate the virus, they decode its genetic material, and then they compare it to every known sample on file. Most ASF outbreaks in Central Europe today, they trace back to a specific lineage that's been moving around for the last few years. But the strain isolated in Catalonia, it belongs to a branch of the family tree that just hasn't been active in the field for years.
And what branch are we talking about here specifically?
The technical detail is, well, it's crucial here. The genetic profile of the Catalan strain is similar to one that was first detected way back in Georgia in 2007.
Georgia 2007, wow.
Yeah. Now, for the layperson, that might sound like a historical footnote, but for biosecurity experts, it instantly raises this massive red flag. What's so fascinating is the specific life cycle of that Georgia 2007 strain. It's what's known as a reference virus.
A reference virus, what does that mean?
So if you look at the strains that are out there in the wild in Germany or Poland right now, they've likely mutated a little bit through transmission.
Okay, they evolved.
Right. But the Georgia strain, it has been intentionally preserved because it represents the original or the reference version of the current epidemic.
So if you're a researcher trying to develop, say, a vaccine, why is that specific strain so important to have?
Because it gives you a consistent baseline. When scientists are working to develop a vaccine, which is, a huge global priority for ASF, they need a reliable, standard virus to challenge their test animals with.
Right.
They use this Georgia 2007 reference strain in controlled experimental infections to study the virus's behavior, or, and this is the key part, to evaluate how effective their vaccine candidates are.
So it's the standard lab-purified challenge virus. And because it's genetically distinct from what's moving through Central Europe, if you find it in the wild, the whole food chain scenario suddenly becomes way less plausible.
Exactly.
If it were, say, a discarded piece of meat from Poland, you'd expect to find the Polish strain.
Precisely. The field virus circulating today is just different enough that if you found the reference strain, the most logical conclusion is that the virus bypassed all the typical routes of transmission and somehow escaped from a facility where that specific strain is being studied.
And the ministry's own public statements, I mean, they reflect this incredible gravity.
Yeah.
They basically had to state that discovering a virus similar to the Georgia strain, well, it doesn't rule out that the origin could be a biological containment facility.
Which is a very serious and difficult admission for any government agency to have to make.
And they have no choice.
None. Failing to investigate a breach scenario when the genetic evidence points right to a controlled environment would be, well, reckless. The integrity of the research sector relies on transparency, but the integrity of that $8.8 billion industry relies on finding the source, and fast.
And the response was immediate. It was targeted. It was geographically focused.
Yeah.
Catalonia's regional president ordered the Agri-Food Research Institute to conduct a full audit. And they focused their attention like a laser beam, specifically on 5 facilities within a very tight 20-kilometer radius of the outbreak that are known to work with the ASF virus.
And we should probably pause for a second and just consider what these facilities are.
Right.
These are highly secure biological containment centers. They're often operating at what's called Biosafety Level 3 or BSL-3.
So serious security.
Very serious. They're designed to work with dangerous pathogens. This means specialized air filtration, redundant layers of physical security, airlocks, and, crucially for this context, rigorous waste sterilization protocols. Every single thing that leaves the lab has to be treated or incinerated.
So for the virus to get out, it implies a pretty significant failure in one of those critical and expensive layers of defense. That just heightens the gravity of this audit.
It does. But we have to stress the official position here. The regional government is being very careful. They're not confirming or ruling out anything yet. They've just committed to due diligence, saying all hypotheses remain open.
And while that high-level audit is running, the efforts on the ground have been just massive and systematic. They are not waiting around to contain this.
No, absolutely not. That physical containment effort is running at full throttle. We know that the 13 confirmed cases are all dead wild boars, and crucially, they were found within a tight 6-kilometer radius of that initial focus.
Which suggests the leak, if there was one, was very localized.
It suggests the point source was localized, yeah.
They are casting a wider net, though. To make sure the virus hasn't hopped into any commercial farms, experts have checked every single one of the 39 pig farms within that 20-kilometer radius.
And so far, the testing has been negative, which is about the only piece of good news in this whole story.
It really is.
And that whole zone is basically on lockdown. Think of it less as a military action and more like a massive, systematic search and destroy operation. Except they're searching for infected boar carcasses. Over 100 personnel from Spain's Military Emergencies Unit have been deployed alongside police and wildlife rangers to just patrol the perimeter and make sure nothing spreads.
That level of resource commitment, bringing in the military, it just underscores the extreme risk here. Which I think brings us to the broader global context of African swine fever. For those who might not be familiar, ASF has been endemic to parts of Africa for a long time. It's completely harmless to humans, so there's no public health risk in that sense. But for pigs, it is highly contagious and often fatal.
And if we connect this case in Catalonia to the bigger picture, you can really understand the fear. ASF has a devastating history.
Yeah.
I mean, the current global crisis really started escalating back in 2018 when the virus appeared in China, which is home to about half the world's pigs.
And the scale of that disaster is just hard to comprehend. By 2019, the devastation was at its peak. Some estimates suggested as many as 100 million pigs were lost in China alone.
100 million.
That wasn't just an agricultural loss. It triggered massive price volatility. It reshaped global protein markets. It was a catastrophe.
And that devastation didn't stay in Asia. In Europe, we watched the virus jump rapidly. It was confirmed in Germany a couple of years later, another country with one of the EU's largest herds. The movement of this virus is just relentless.
And for Spain, the threat feels, well, uniquely personal because of their market dominance. They are the EU's #1 pork producer. And their industry has been growing at this incredible pace, which only increases the exposure.
Yeah.
To give you a concrete idea of the scale, Spain slaughtered 58 million pigs in 2021 alone.
That is an astonishing volume. I mean, to put that 58 million figure in perspective for you, That's enough pigs to outnumber the entire human population of Spain.
Wow.
It's a core component of their economy, especially in regions like Catalonia.
And the economic dominoes that would fall are just vast. I mean, if you break down that export volume, last year they sent products worth 5.1 billion just to other EU countries. That trade would immediately halt. And even more precarious is the 3.7 billion worth of pork they export outside the bloc to places like China and Japan, which are extremely sensitive to any ASF reports.
So if these wild boar cases transition into even one single commercial farm, the entire global trade reputation of Spanish pork is immediately jeopardized. Not to mention the logistical nightmare of culling infected herds. The stakes are, well, they're sky high.
So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive thinking we were looking at a tragic, but, a standard case of animal disease transmission.
Right. A careless traveler, a piece of infected meat, a scavenging boar.
But the entire investigation pivoted based on highly specific scientific evidence. That genetic sequencing that identified the Georgia 2007 reference strain, that finding strongly suggests the possibility of a leak from a biological containment facility, not transmission from contaminated food products.
And this specific genetic fingerprint has triggered these aggressive containment measures on the ground, military deployment, rapid audits of 5 research centers.
All done against the backdrop of Spain's multi-billion-euro pork industry, just holding its collective breath, hoping the fences hold.
And this raises a really important question, one that goes beyond Spain's borders, I think. It gets into the complexity of modern biological research. We rely completely on those very containment facilities to develop the next generation of vaccines against these destructive global pathogens, like ASF.
The irony is pretty stark. You need to work with these dangerous viruses to figure out how to beat them.
Exactly. But working with dangerous pathogens in high-security facilities, no matter how secure they are, it always carries an inherent, if small, risk of escape. We're seeing a real-time, high-cost example of that tension between the essential need for advanced research and the potential risks when that research is done right next to a high-value agricultural sector.
It's a complex layer of biosecurity to think about, isn't it? I mean, how do nations balance this essential high-risk scientific discovery with protecting multi-billion-euro industries? It forces you to ask if our biosecurity protocols are truly robust enough to handle the inevitable human or mechanical failures. We'll be watching how that investigation into the 5 facilities develops. That's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thank you for joining us.